So yesterday the question came up about the motivation for taking on monastic life. And the primary one to receive the precepts must be one of renunciation and together with the aspiration for liberation. At least that, if not bodhicitta, because we're Mahayana practitioners. So generating a real distaste for samsara is not easy, especially in the desire realm. Well, actually, in all the realms. So we have to really think very critically of the defects of cyclic existence over and over and over again to help us penetrate the appearance of happiness and normality that we have in cyclic existence. So to repeatedly contemplate the fact that we're born, aging, get ill, and die. And especially in between that, we try so hard to be happy, but happiness really eludes us. And when we meditate on that, the purpose isn't to get depressed. It's so that we see samsara for what it is and want to be free of it. And then not only want to be free of it for ourselves, but seeing that we and others are exactly the same in wanting happiness and not suffering, wanting to attain full Buddhahood so we can most effectively lead others on the path as well. So with that kind of motivation, we want to cultivate that kind of motivation for taking ordination, and it requires a lot of effort, but we also create that motivation for listening to the Dharma talks during EML. So contemplating on the defects of samsara is not light, love, and bliss, okay, but it's reality, and it helps us to see the reality of our situation. So the analogy that's usually given is if you are locked in a prison, but you don't see it as a prison, or you think it's quite comfortable there, then you're not going to try and do anything to get out. And so samsara is like a prison, except the jailers aren't other people. The jailers are our own afflictions, ignorance, anger, animosity, karma, these kinds of things. Those are the jailers. And the prison is quite nicely decorated. We have a sunny day today. Yeah. It's not going to be as hot as yesterday. We are in a beautiful place with trees and grass. and knapweed, but we'll ignore that. Yeah. Oh, there's nice people around us. Somebody's cooking us lunch. It's kind of nice. So, when everything in our samsaric world seems quite nice and stable, we don't anticipate any big shakeups from now until the end of the course. Of course, who knows what will happen, but we don't anticipate any, and we, if any come, will be very shocked, even though intellectually we know that, it's an of forest fires and that things break, and we live in a country with an erratic leader, and, who knows what in the world's going to happen. But we're just kind of deluded into, this kind of, nothing's too bad. So, I want to be a good person, not harm anybody, as long as they're nice to me. If they're mean to me, then I should harm them because they deserve it, and that'll stop them from harming other people. That's the way we think, isn't it? So, some resentment is natural, normal. Wish to harm others, why not? Everybody else does. We should too. A little bit of arrogance. I mean, we're in the most arrogant country on the planet. Why shouldn't we be arrogant too? So, then we just get, it's kind of comfy. And then we don't make any effort to get out of the prison of samsara because it's pretty comfy. And okay, there's a few problems, but, okay, I get old, but, that's not going to happen for a while. We don't think we're getting old each moment. No, old age comes later. And your definition of old changes with each decade you celebrate a birthday. I remember when 40 was really old. Do you remember that? Wow, somebody who was 40 was totally, walking with crutches, bent over, from 40 onwards. Now 40's kind of young. So, aging, sickness, okay, I get a cold, that's not too bad. But cancer, heart attacks, kidney disease, those things happen to other people. Death, well, but not really. I'm not going to die. I'm going to have some special, there's going to be something special about me. I won't die. And if I do die, it's not going to happen for, another 1,000 years. So, nothing to worry about on that account. This is, if we look in our mind at our attitudes, at what the innate way of looking at the world is, this is how we look at it. Of course we say, oh yes, in 100 years none of us are going to be here. We all say that. But do we really believe it in our heart? No. Okay, so, part of the motivation that we need to cultivate is an understanding that is here and not just here. Because when our understanding is here, but here we feel like we're impermeable, then, our behavior does not really correspond with the reality of the situation. Remember when you were a teenager and you did all sorts of like really dangerous things because, problems happen to other people? Yeah, they're the ones who get in car wrecks. They're the ones who fall off of mountains or get in ski accidents, but not us. But when you're in your teens, you're really what's the word? It's not impermeable. Immortal and invincible. That's the word. Yes, we're invincible. Yeah. And we will go through anything. It's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Our mind is so full of delusion. It's just amazing. Yeah. Remember when, you had your first love affair? Together we will face the world. We will conquer everything together. Our love will never change for each other. Yeah, remember that? Yeah? Then how long until you broke up? Yeah? But this ideal, like perfect love is going to be forever and ever and face all problems together. Yeah. So romantic. Yeah. And we believe it. Yeah. Even though our experience is to the contrary. Okay. So, So really looking adequately or accurately at samsara is very, very important. And so in that regard, I'm going to read you one of the suttas from the Pali Canon from the Majjhima Nikaya. And it's one that the people who've attended previous EMLs have heard. It's the story of Rathapala. Yeah. But even if you've heard the story many times, every time it brings you back to what does it mean what does it entail to really have a good motivation for ordination and to really have your heart in it. And what do you have to deal with, both internally inside yourself, as well as social pressures and family pressures outside yourself? Yeah, because everybody has to go through this. And so even if you've already ordained, we need to come back again and again to why we ordained, because otherwise the mind can sometimes get pretty complacent. Yeah, okay, I got through first few years of ordination. They were hard, but now I'm kind of cruising, and I've etched out a place in what I'm doing, and, it's not too bad, and we get complacent. Yeah. So these kinds of stories, I think, bring us back and help us touch base again with the deeper motivation we had when we ordained. Okay, so this is about Rathapala and his family. So this is Ananda who's relating it because he spoke the sutras at the first council. So he said, "Thus have I heard on one occasion," and one of the reasons I'm going to read this is because many of you probably haven't read the Pali Suttas, and it's very interesting to hear not just my rendition, but like how it's explained in the sutta itself. And Okay, so on one occasion, the Blessed One was wandering in the Kuru country with a large sangha of bhikkhus, and eventually he arrived at a Kuru town named Tulakotita. The Brahmin householders of Tulakotita heard the recluse Gautama, son of the Sakyans, who went forth from a Sakyan clan, has been wandering the Kuru country with a large sangha of bhikkhus and has come to Tulakotita. Now a good report of Master Gautama has been spread to this effect. That Blessed One is accomplished, fully enlightened, perfect in true knowledge and conduct, sublime, knower of the worlds, incomparable leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened, blessed. You recognizing that? This is the praise that we chant to the Buddha every day. Yeah. So it's in the Tibetan tradition, it's in the Pali tradition. He declares this world, the Buddha declares this world with its gods, its maras, and its brahmas, this generation with its recluses. Recluses means the other renunciants in India wandering around at that time. This generation with its recluses and Brahmins, its princes and its people, which he himself has realized with direct knowledge. He teaches the Dharma, good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Another phrase we see in many Tibetan scriptures. With the right meaning and phrasing, and he reveals a holy life that is utterly perfect and pure. Now it is good to see such arhats. So that's what's spreading in the town about the newest celebrity who has come and his sangha. Then the Brahmin householders of Tulakotita went to the Blessed One. Some paid homage to the Blessed One and sat down on one side. Some exchanged greetings with him, and when this courteous and amiable talk was finished, sat down on one side. Some extended their hands in reverential salutation towards the Blessed One and sat down on one side. Some pronounced their name and clan in the Blessed One's presence and sat down on one side. Some kept silent and sat down on one side. So you can see there's a whole lot of people with very different dispositions coming there, and so just even by how they greet the Buddha, they're showing something about how receptive they are or how they regard things. Okay. And that's not criticizing any of these people. Some of the people who are quite skeptical, they may be the ones who want to investigate the teachings more deeply and really understand them well, not people who have blind faith. When they were seated, the Blessed One instructed, urged, roused, and encouraged them with talk on the Dharma. Now at that time, a clansman named Rathapala, the son of the leading clan in that same Tulakotita, was sitting in the assembly. Then it occurred to him, as I understand the Dharma taught by the Blessed One, it is not easy while living in a home to lead the holy life, utterly perfect and pure as a polished shell. Suppose I shave off my head and beard, put on the yellow robe, and go forth from the home life into the homelessness. So this idea occurred in his mind when he was listening to the Buddha's Dharma talk. Then the Brahmin householders of Tulakotita, having been instructed, urged, roused, and encouraged by the Blessed One with talk on the Dharma, delighted and rejoiced in his words. They then arose from their seats, and after paying homage to him, they departed, keeping him on their right. So this tradition of keeping respected beings on your right is why our right arm is bare, and why when we circumambulate things, we are walking clockwise with our right side towards the holy object. Okay, so if you've ever wondered why that happens, that's why. It's coming from ancient India. Soon after they left, the clansman, Ratapala, went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and said to the Blessed One, "Venerable Sir, as I understand the Dharma taught by the Blessed One, it is not easy while living in a home to live the holy life, utterly pure and utterly perfect and pure, as a polished shell. Venerable Sir, I wish to shave off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and go forth from the home life into homelessness. I would receive the going forth under the Blessed One. I would receive the full admission." Okay, so here he is making his request. So he's requesting the going forth. That is what is often called rapjung, and that's when you take the 5 precepts and the 3 promises. You shave your head, you can put on robes, yeah. And then he's also seeking the full admission. In other words, he wants to become a bhikkhu. Okay. And then the Buddha says, "Have you been permitted by your parents, Ratapala, to go forth from the home life into homelessness?" Because in the early times, the Buddha ordained people, like there was a whole group coming from the Sakya land, and he ordained all of them, and then the families kind of freaked out, and they said, all the men who are the breadwinners who are working the field, they've just left, and, everybody else is really hard put without, all these people around to help them stay alive and work the fields and so on. And so after that, then the Buddha required that people have their parents' permission to ordain. So that's why he asked. And Ratapala said, "No, Venerable Sir, I have not been permitted by my parents." Ratapala, Tathagatas do not give the going forth to anyone who does not have his parents' permission. Okay, and then Ratapala said, "Venerable Sir, I shall see to it that my parents permit me to go forth from the home life into homelessness." Nowadays, it's strongly advised to have parents' permission. It's not as required as it was in the olden times, because in ancient India, the family structure, you were always living with your family from birth to death, and you were in that, and you were needed, Now people grow up, they leave their family, they live across the country. So people have very, very different relationships now with their family. So when people are young, it's often required, but then, when they're older, it's not as important, although it's definitely helpful to have that. Okay, then the clansman, Ratapala, rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, he departed, keeping him on his right. He went to his parents and told them, "Mother and Father, as I understand the Dharma taught by the Blessed One, it is not easy, while living in a home, to lead the holy life, utterly perfect and pure as a polished shell. I wish to shave off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and go forth from the home life into homelessness. Give me permission to go forth from the home life into homelessness." Okay. When he said this, his parents replied, "Dear Ratapala, you are our only son, dear and beloved. You have been raised in comfort, brought up in comfort. You know nothing of suffering, Ratapala. Even in case of your death, we would lose you unwillingly. So how could we give you our permission to go forth from the home life into homelessness while you are still living?" For the second time, Ratnapala made the request, and his parents replied in the same way. Then, for a third time, Ratapala made the request, and his parents replied in the same way. Okay. So then, not receiving his parents' permission to go forth, the clansman Ratapala lay down there on the bare floor, saying, "Right here I shall either die or receive the going forth." He was determined from the get-go, and of course we're just reciting this once, but you can imagine it wasn't that his parents said, "Dear Ratnapala, you are our only son, dear and beloved, and we'll miss you if you die, but of course we'll miss you more if you're alone, if you're alive." His parents didn't say it like that. They were like, "Ah!" Can you imagine? In ancient India, your only son, our son, he's leaving us. Who will do all the rituals when we die? Because you have to have your son do the rituals. When you're in a Brahmin family after you die. Who will do those rituals? Who will support us? We love him. He's been pampered. He goes out there. He's going to have one meal a day. He's going to starve to death. He's going to wear rags. Our kid can't wear rags. He's not used to that kind of thing. He's going to sleep out in the open. Oh my God, what's going to happen? The lions and tigers are going to eat him up. And if they don't get him, the scorpions will, or the tarantulas. And, we cannot. We love our child too much. We want him to be happy. We cannot let him risk his life and go out there and leave us. And, we love him too dearly. And, his mother's sobbing, his father's, red in the face. So there's a whole scene going on here. It's not just sweet little words like I'm reading, okay? Okay, I don't know if any of you, I know this from experience, you see. This is what happened in my case. A certain version of this. Okay. So he said, "Right here I shall either die or receive the going forth." So his parents are thinking, rebellious kid. You've got to listen to what your parents tell you to do. Then the clansman Ratnapala's parents said to him, "Dear Ratnapala, you are our only son, dear and beloved. You have been raised in comfort, brought up in comfort. You know nothing of suffering, dear Ratnapala. Get up, dear Ratnapala. Eat, drink, and amuse yourself. While eating and drinking and amusing yourself, you can be happy, enjoying sense pleasures, and make merit. We do not permit you to," now his father's coming, "we do not permit you to go forth from the home life into the homelessness. Even in the case of your death, we would lose you unwillingly. So how can we give you our permission to go forth from the home life into the homelessness while you are living? You do not have our permission, and you need to obey us. We are your parents." When this was said, the clansman Ratapala was silent. For the second time, his parents said that. Okay, so this is a whole thing going on all afternoon. Yeah. For the third time, his parents said that. Okay, and after each time, the clansman Ratapala was silent. Then the clansman Ratapala's parents went to his friends. Yeah, they couldn't convince him, so they went to his friends and said to them, "Dears, the clansman Ratapala has lain down on the bare floor, having said, 'Right here I shall either die or receive the going forth.' Come, dears, go to the clansman Ratapala and say to him, friend Ratapala, you are your parents' only son, dear and beloved. You have been raised in comfort, brought up in comfort. You know nothing of suffering. Dear Ratapala, get up, dear Ratapala. Eat, drink, and amuse yourself. We'll take you out. We'll have a good time. While eating, drinking, and amusing yourself, you can be happy, enjoying sense pleasure, and make merit. We do not, even though we're your friends, we do not permit you to go forth from the home life into homelessness. Yeah, you're too valuable to us. Even in the case of your death, we would lose you unwillingly. So how could we give you our permission to go forth from the home life into the homelessness while you are still living? Okay. So his friends are saying the same thing to him as his parents said. Yeah. You would think his friends would understand him and say, yeah, we heard that Dharma talk. We understand what you want to do with your life. Nope. His friends towing the standard line. Yeah. And saying, you're out of your mind, kid. We go out, we have a good time. Why do you want to go do that? Yeah. You want to be out there and just, not eat in the afternoon and not drink, and you're going to be celibate. Yeah. And you're not going to live with your family. You're not going to have a job. What kind of reputation are you going to have in this village anyway? Yeah, everybody's just going to call you a flake. You walked out on your family. You're a good for nothing. So then, again, the clansman Ratnapala's friends went to him and said that. And Ratnapala was silent. And the third time, his friend said that to him, and Ratnapala was silent. Okay, so things are getting desperate now. When the clansman Ratnapala's friends went back to his parents and said to them, or then the clansman Ratnapala's friends went back to his parents and said to them, Mother and Father, the clansman Ratnapala is lying down there on the bare floor, having said, right here I shall either die or get the going forth. Now, if you do not give him your permission to go forth from the home life into homelessness, he will die there. But if you give him your permission, you will see him after he has gone forth. And if he does not enjoy the going forth, what else can he do but return here? So give him your permission to go forth from the home life into homelessness. This is just a phase. He has this crazy idea in his mind because he heard this guy talking in the morning. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He just has this romantic notion that he's going to go off and live in the wilderness and attain some kind of enlightened state. What is this craziness this kid is talking about? But it's, like I said, it's a phase. Let him do it. He'll do it. He'll see what it's really like. He'll be back within a month. If not a month, he'll be back in a year. So, this is the easy way, Mom and Dad, because otherwise, he's pretty stubborn. He's going to lie there and he'll die. And, then you'll have the police come and they'll look into your family background and what in the world was done. And this could work out into a big, you could even get arrested for it. Okay? So then the parents said, then, dears, we give the clansman Ratnapala permission to go forth from the home life into homelessness. But when he has gone forth, he must visit his parents. So again, It wasn't like that. It was like, then dears, we can't bear this, but if he's gonna die, we give this permission. He can go forth and do this craziness. But he's got to come home and see us regularly. Every week we want to visit. He's our son. He can't leave us. He's part of our family and we love him dearly. And he's got to come back home every week. And then we'll make sure he's fed well and he has nice clothes. Okay, you got it? The clansman Ratapala then got up, and when he had regained his strength, because this may have taken a few days, so he was probably not eating that whole time. Yeah, and when he had regained his strength, he went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down on one side and told him, Venerable Sir, I have my parents' permission to go forth from the home life into homelessness. He didn't tell him the whole story behind it. Yeah. Let the Blessed One give me the going forth. Then the clansman Ratapala received the going forth under the Blessed One, and he received the full admission. Okay, and so because he was so determined and nothing was going to stop him, later on the Buddha said that he was the foremost disciple who risked death as he risked death as the foremost disciple of those gone forth with faith. Okay. So then, not long after the Venerable Ratapala had received the full admission, a half month after he had received the full admission, actually it was probably longer. When they say then not long after, it could be quite a period of time after. Although it says after a half month here, but anyway. A half month after he had received the full admission, the Blessed One, having stayed at Tulakatita as long as he chose, he got ordained. A half month later, the Buddha decided to set out to wander toward Sravasti. So the Buddha was coming here to Sravasti. Wandering by stages, he eventually arrived at Sravasti is the Pali translation, Sravasti is the Sanskrit. And there he lived at Sravasti in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. And so we will take you to our Anathapindika's park one day on a long walk. Okay, and then again it says before long, but here it was probably about 12 years, at least. Yeah, because it takes some time to practice. Yeah, it's not that you sit down and practice and by Tuesday you're awakened. But it says, before long, dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute, the Venerable Ratapala, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, here and now, entered upon and abided in that supreme goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the home life into homelessness. He directly knew, birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. And the Venerable Ratapala became one of the Arhats. Okay? So he did something good, He got ordained, he practiced well, he became an Arhat. Yeah. And then the Venerable Ratapala went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down on one side and told him, "Venerable Sir, I wish to visit my parents if I have the Blessed One's permission." Okay, so he's been away for at least 12 years now, and he's an arhat, so his practice is stable. Yeah, he's not going to get hooked by any of the hooks that they throw out. And just wait to see what's coming. Okay. Then the Blessed One penetrated mentally the thoughts in Venerable Ratnapala's mind. When he knew that the clansman Ratapala was incapable of abandoning the training and returning to the low life. Okay, then he told him, "Now is the time, Ratapala, to do as you think fit." So because Ratapala's practice was stable, he had realizations, he no longer had attachment for his family, he wasn't going to go back and, when they start doing their numbers, succumb to the family pressure and feel guilty or feel obliged or have all of his attachment for his family come up. So the Buddha knew that wasn't going to happen, and so gave him permission to go. Then the Venerable Ratapala rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, he departed, keeping him on his right. He then set his resting place in order, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he set out to wander towards Tulakotita. Wandering by stages, he eventually arrived at Tulakotita. There he lived in Tulakotita in King Kauravya's Migachira's garden. Then, when it was morning, he dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went into Tulakotita for alms. As he was wandering for alms from house to house in Tulakotita, he came to his own father's house. So they would go in order, they'd enter into the town, they'd go in order, one house at a time, and just stand there for a few minutes. If people brought food, good. If they didn't, then they would go on to the next house. And they usually got a little bit of food from many houses and then brought it back to the place, the wilderness place or garden or forest where they were staying, and ate there. But sometimes the Sangha received invitations to eat at a layperson's house, and they would invite a certain number of Sangha members to go. Okay. But anyway, there he is in front of his own parents' house. Now on that occasion, the Venerable Ratapala's father was sitting in the hall of the central door, having his hair dressed. Okay, so this is what Ratapala could have been doing had he not ordained. When he saw the Venerable Ratapala coming in the distance, he said, "Our only son, dear and beloved, was made to go forth by these bald-padded recluses. Here's this guy, he's one of the ones that our son went off and became like. And now, and one of these guys is coming to our door to ask for food." Then, at his own father's house, the Venerable Ratapala received neither alms nor a polite refusal. Instead, he received only abuse. Yeah? His father was like, these people took our son away. I'm not giving them anything. Yeah, so not even food, not even a polite decline, but get out of here. Just then, a slave woman belonging to one of his relatives was about to throw away some old porridge. Seeing this, the Venerable Ratapala said to her, "Sister, if that stuff is to be thrown away, then pour it into my bowl here." Okay, don't waste food. I'll eat it, even if it's old porridge. While she was doing so, she recognized the characteristic features of his hands, his feet, and his voice. So she recognized him. Then she went to his mother and said, "Please know, my lady, that my lord's son Ratapala has arrived." Okay. And the mother says, "Gracious, if what you say is true, you are no longer a slave." Hallelujah, our kids come back. This is fantastic. Then the Venerable Ratapala's mother went to his father and said, "Please, no, householder. They say the clansman Ratapala has arrived." Just then, the Venerable Ratapala was eating the old porridge by the wall of a certain shelter. Okay. His father went to him and said, "Ratapala, my dear, surely there is." And you, surely there is. There is. What are the missing words? Okay. Anyway, he said, "Surely you're here and you're eating old porridge? Is this not your own house to go to? Yeah, so why are you eating this old porridge sitting out leaning against the wall of a shelter when you're at our house?" And Ratapala says, "How could we have a householder, when we have gone forth from the home life into homelessness? We are homeless, householder. We went to your house, but we received neither alms nor a polite refusal there. Instead, we received only abuse." And Father says, "Dear Ratnapala, let us go to the house. I'll give you everything. I'm so happy to see you. That was a mistake that we said that to you. We didn't recognize it was you. We love you so much. Come home. We're so happy to see you. This is wonderful." Okay, and on and on. And Ratapala says, "Enough, householder. My meal for the day is finished." So it's noontime. He's not eating anymore. Yeah. And his father's like, "Oh no," And so he says, "Then, dear Ratapala, consent to accept tomorrow's meal." The Venerable Ratapala consented in silence. So that's how you consent as a monastic. You keep silent. Then, knowing that the Venerable Ratapala had consented, his father went back to his house, where he had gold coins and gold bullion made into a large heap and covered it with mats. Then he told the Venerable Ratapala's former wives, "Come, daughters-in-law, adorn yourself with ornaments in the way Ratapala found you most dear and lovable." Okay, so he had been married before, multiple wives, and I don't know what had happened to them in the time they were gone, but he was gone. But now, the father is like, okay, he's back, and we're going to give him the gold, we're going to make, his favorite food, they're going to be his wives, all adorned and with sandalwood perfume, looking beautiful, and we're going to get him back. Okay, so think about the father's motivation here. When night had ended, the Venerable Ratapala's father had good food of various kinds prepared in his own house, and had the time announced to the Venerable Ratapala, "It is time, dear Ratapala, the meal is ready." Then it became morning. The Venerable Ratapala dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went to his father's house and sat down on the seat made ready. Then his father had the pile of gold coins and gold bullion uncovered and said, Dear Ratapala, this is your maternal fortune. Your paternal fortune is another, and your ancestral fortune is yet another. Yeah. So here's your mother's portfolio, all the stocks and bonds, plus gold, everything. I have in my portfolio, same thing. Your ancestral, same thing. You are rich. Yeah, you don't have to worry about anything. You have so much wealth. Dear Ratapala, you can enjoy the wealth and make merit. You see what his father said? You can be a householder and practice the Dharma and create merit. You don't need to be so extreme. Yeah, says his father. Yeah, you're being so extreme. Just be normal, will you? Okay. Come then, dear, abandon the training and return to the low life. Enjoy the wealth and make merit. You're so rich, now you can sponsor temples. You can invite the Sangha to come and, you'll make so much merit this way. And Ratapala said, householder, if you would follow my advice, then have this pile of gold coins and bullion loaded on carts and carried away to be dumped midstream in the river Ganges. Why is that? Because, householder, on account of this, there will arise for you sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. In other words, dear Father, you think all this gold and the whole stock and bond portfolio is going to bring you happiness. It's not. Yeah. And other people are going to try and take it. It'll get stolen. You're going to be vastly surprised that, and radically disappointed that this is not going to prevent you from getting old and sick and dying. And that no matter how much money you have, aging, sickness, and death are going to befall you. And there's nothing your money can do to stop it. Yeah. So, it's better for you to get rid of this because it's such an object of attachment for you. And if you die with attachment towards all your wealth, you're going to be born in a lower realm. And if you live with attachment towards your wealth, you're going to create so much negative karma protecting it so that other people don't steal it, they don't get it. So this wealth is like poison for you. If you're attached to it, you're just going to do a lot of things that create non-virtue, and then when you die, you're going to be thinking about who's going to take my treasure and who's going to get it, and you're going to be miserable at the time of death. And if you die with that kind of misery and you've created negative karma during your life, it's not going to be good for your future life, Father. So, if you really want to take my advice, don't give this stuff to me, but go dump it in the middle of the river. Yeah, nowadays he would say, give it to a charity. Yeah. Then the Venerable Ratapala's former wives clasped his feet and said to him, what are they like, my Lord's son, the nymphs for whose sake you lead the holy life? Okay, like you walked out on us, so tell us what they look like, and we'll try and look like them. And Ratapala says, we do not lead the holy life for the sake of nymphs, sisters. Okay, he called them sisters. They're going, Our Lord, and they say, our Lord's son, Ratapala, called us sisters, they cried, and right there they fainted. Because they had, we're working with stereotypes of men and women here. So they did everything as women that they could do to induce him to come back. And he didn't even say, wow, you look good in that sari, Or he didn't say, oh, I like your jewelry, or you look so beautiful, or you're very tempting. He just said, I'm not practicing the Dharma for the sake of nymphs, sisters. And he called them sisters. He didn't call them dearly beloved, And right then and there, they just collapsed because what could they do? They had been thoroughly 100% rejected. It's like he's saying, look, I broke up 12 years ago when I left. You're still hanging around. Look, we are done. Yeah, this isn't a phase. Then the Venerable Ratapala, can you imagine what Ratapala is going through? And this is why the Buddha checked and saw that he had become an arhat, was not susceptible to attachment and guilt trips and so on before allowing him to go. Then the Venerable Ratapala told his father, householders, if there is a meal to be given, then give it to me. Do not harass us. Like, you asked us here to have lunch. Will you feed us already? We're not interested in your gold. We're not interested in the wives. This is all very harassing and troublesome to us. And, this wasn't part of the lunch invitation. And we have to eat before 12, so please. Okay. So he said it very nicely, but it must have been very hard for him to see all of this, and then to try and get across to his parents, like, you're talking to somebody who doesn't exist right now. This is not me. Please, I'm a monastic. Relate to me as a monastic. And then his father said, eat then, dear Ratapala, the meal is ready. So, okay, I haven't gotten you back by the gold, by your wives. Go ahead and eat. We'll think of something. Then, with his own hands, the Venerable Ratapala's father served and satisfied him with the various kinds of good food. When the Venerable Ratapala had eaten and had withdrawn his hand from the bowl, he stood up and uttered these stanzas. So after the Sangha, if they were invited to somebody's home for a meal, after they ate, then they would give some kind of Dharma teaching. So this is really showing the reciprocal nature of the time, at that time, that the monastics were poor in material things, but rich in the Dharma. So they gave their wealth of the Dharma to the laity. The laity was rich in material things. They didn't have as much Dharma. They shared their material things and supported the Sangha, and then they received the teachings from the Sangha. So Ratnapala said, behold a puppet here pranked out. So here he's, by puppet, he's referring to his wives, okay, who I think the father was kind of using as puppets, And now he goes on to describe them. A body built up out of sores, sick, an object for concern, where no stability abides. Behold a figure here pranked out with jewelry and earrings too, a skeleton wrapped up in skin, made attractive by its clothes. Okay, so this is a critique not only of ancient society, but our society. You know, what is the body? It's a sack of gooey, rather disgusting stuff inside. And we dress it up on the outside, making it look nice, you know, with scents and beautiful clothes and jewelry, and you style your hair a certain way, or if you're a guy, you go out and get some hair because you're going bald. And, you know, you make the body beautiful, and you go to the gym, and you have a good shape, whatever you want your shape to be, and you dye your hair, and but it's still a body, and everything that comes out of the body is something we don't want around, from the stuff on our eyes when we wake up in the morning, to earwax, to vomit, to what comes out of the lower orifices, to sweat. You know, the body produces just disgusting stuff. And yet, look, you're dressing it all up, you know, in the form of my wives, and trying to seduce me with all this. But I'm not falling for it, because I've practiced mindfulness of the body, and I know very clearly what the body is. Yeah. So again, he's talking about his wives, its feet, this body's feet, adorned with henna dye. So that's the kind of reddish color that they draw on their hands, making beautiful shapes on hands and arms and faces. Yeah. Okay. Its feet adorned with henna dye, and powder smeared upon its face. It may beguile a fool, but not a seeker of the further shore. So it may beguile, you know, some guy down the block, but my intention is to get to nirvana, and I don't want to have a detour. Its hair is dressed in eightfold plaits, and unguent, am I saying that right? Unguent smeared upon its eyes. It may beguile a fool, but not a seeker of the further shore. A filthy body well adorned, like a new painted unguent pot. It may beguile a fool, but not a seeker of the further shore. The deer hunter set out the snare, but the deer did not spring the trap. We ate the bait and now depart, leaving the hunters to lament. Bye, Dad. You tried. I didn't fall for it. And I wish you well, and now we're going. So after the Venerable Ratapala had stood up and uttered these stanzas, he went to King Kauravya's Megachira's garden and sat down at the root of a tree for the day's abiding. So the day's abiding was his meditation practice. So let's see. We still have a bit to go here. Okay, this is a good place to pause. Okay, and we'll continue tomorrow. I think there's something maybe to think about. But maybe you have some questions and comments in the meantime.
I found it interesting the way it was phrased of, even if you were to die, we would lose you unwillingly. Mm-hmm. So then like the parallel drawn of like, so you going forth is like a death as well. Mm-hmm. And how much then the parents wouldn't have seen their children, or their friends wouldn't have seen their children that went forth because of the more wandering life. Mm-hmm. Whereas now we might still be in more contact with our families, which can have benefits and rise up more difficulties of the clinging and the pulling still going on. And yeah, I always wonder how much our families would still consider it to be a death of someone that they knew in the new role that we enter into.
Yeah. My parents at one point, I have a brother and a sister, they started telling people they only had 2 kids. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, so now, it's true. We do have communication and transportation methods now, which actually make it much harder for people. In one way, it makes it easier for the family, but it can actually make it more difficult for the people who renounce. I have one Dharma friend, and from a very well-to-do family, a nun, and her family supports her completely. She has her own house, she has a car, she lives very comfortably, and they expect her to go on family vacations with her. So if the family is going to Europe, if the family is taking a cruise, their son and their daughter, their son has a family, and their daughter are expected to go with. And she happily goes with, because there's that attachment to the family, and also because they are supporting her, she feels obliged. And I look at that, and for me, of course, I would never say anything to her, but for me, that looks like a big hindrance. Yeah, because you're not really free to do what you want. And even in her house, she has a meditation room, but most of the house looks like a regular kind of house. It doesn't have all Dharma things around it, because it's sponsored by her family, and she's got to keep her grandmother's dishes and the family heirlooms and things like that. That's expected of her, and so our situations were quite different because my family just didn't want to talk to me, and I was very poor, and yet I had so much freedom because I didn't have my family's expectations, to go on vacations. Most Sunday nights, she went to her family's house for dinner, talked to her parents during the week. So I think I'm not saying that we should just cut it, I'm not talking to you again, Mom and Dad. That just, we should be kind to our parents, of course, and keep in touch with them. But when we talk about going from home life into homeless, what does homeless life mean? Yeah, it means that you're not completely involved in your family with all of its dramas. Yeah, because families have dramas, don't they? Does your family have dramas? Yeah, all families have dramas. And then they're calling you on the phone. Sister so-and-so and brother so-and-so are quarreling over this niece and that nephew, and they aren't talking to each other. And, and then your cousin, is now a heroin addict, and they found him on the street, and you've got to do something about it. And there's gazillions of family problems. They're never ending. And if you're, intricately involved with your family, it's very difficult to have time to study and practice. Yeah, because you go back and you just go into your old role in the family, whatever your old role was. Yeah. And you go back into your old role, and it's so comfortable because you did it for so long. And you know what's expected of you. Yeah. And then, you're wearing the robes, but the practice doesn't get done. Hold on a second. In the Himalaya areas, many nuns ordain, but there's no nunnery there for them to live in. so they live with their families and they basically become unpaid servants. Yeah. So in our thing, you may be involved with your family. You're not an unpaid servant, but you're completely, all the goo. It's like melted marshmallows, and everywhere you go, you're sticking to something.
So apart from the attachment and the obligations, there is also this third factor. I feel the third, apart from obligation attachment, there is also the responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And with this, I actually, I find that a challenging factor.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have a karmic relationship that goes deep with the family in this life. So we also have an ability to benefit them.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there is the possibility to. Yeah, so there's also the responsibility. That's.
What's the difference between responsibility and obligation?
Oh, it's huge because I can do something for them. Not for every time, not so much maybe. But for example, I've got many nieces. One niece, whenever she sees me, she just clings to me. And there is this need that she doesn't get met at home. And, she and there is a need there that she doesn't get met. And I feel it and I see it and I try to accommodate it as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was and of course it's it's a project, it's a recognition. But when my parents were at the phase where they couldn't take care of us very well, we had a grandmother which was this sort of the saving grace for me. She was the one that happened to be there, and therefore I had this.
So this is where it gets very sticky.
Very sticky.
Very sticky, because on one hand, like you said, you can see that there's a need and that there's something that you could do. And we talk about benefiting sentient beings. And so, here's some sentient beings who we can benefit and we should go benefit them, And so that has some sense to it. On the other side, there's to what extent is that going to continue? This relative needs you, then that relative needs you, then another relative needs you. Yeah. And then is when it gets quite sticky. In the case of a niece who isn't well taken care of at home, who has some emotional needs. So, she can come visit you and spend some time with you. That doesn't mean that you need to live at the house. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you need to be there 100% of the time for her, but you can, have a relationship with her. But the thing to do is to really, okay, let me just back up. I didn't have that, I'm going to talk personally now, I didn't have that kind of urgent need with a family member, but there was a lot of pressure on me, a lot of pressure not to do this. And I had to think, okay, I could live as my family wanted, because I was married at the time when I met the Dharma, I could live as they wanted, have a career, have my 2.5 children, what my mother wanted me to have. I don't know what happened to the 0.5 kid, but, whatever the birth rate is. They wanted me to be there to help take care of them, to attend family gatherings, to be their pride and joy, so that when they talk to their friends, because one friend's daughter was a lawyer, one was a doctor, one was this, all educated, well-to-do people, and of course they wanted to brag about their children. And my parents said, you're going off to live in Nepal and they don't even have flush toilets. And what do we say to our friends when our friends are talking about, what their kids are doing? We feel so embarrassed and ashamed, and our friends are going to think that we're lousy parents because you ran off and you joined some cult. And my parents went to meetings for cults. They didn't know Buddhism was a world religion. They thought I had joined a cult. And so I really had to think very, very much, very deeply on this. And I thought, okay, I was married to a lovely man, stay married, live the life my parents wanted, make everybody happy. I was a teacher. I helped lots of kids as a teacher. I was elementary school. Helped lots of kids, I could create merit, doing a lot of benefit for sentient beings. And I looked at my mind, and with the degree of attachment and self-centeredness and anger that I had, I knew there was no way I could sustain a decent Dharma practice doing that. I knew, I knew it would be impossible. And so I knew I could live the life other people wanted me to live, that you could say I had responsibility or obligation to live. Yeah, my parents had sacrificed a lot to do what they did for their kids. But I also knew if I did that, next life I'd wind up in the lower realms, and let alone not be able to take care of myself. There was no way I could take care of my parents. So I might make them happy for a few years this life, and then after that, all of us were going to be in the lower realms. That was real clear to me. And so then I said, okay, they're going to be unhappy, they're going to criticize me, but I think in the long term, for their welfare and the welfare of all sentient beings, this is going to be the best thing to do. Yeah. And so I did it. Yeah. It sounds like you may have a different family situation there.
But still, no, but I mean, so there's no obligation, but there is, well, in a sense, but there is more responsibility from my side.
Yeah.
But it's still the same thing that the situation.
Yeah, it's the same.
It is either caring for them or but in being in a position where I care for them, it's not the most it's not good for my Dharma practice.
Yeah.
It's not good for me.
Yeah, it's not good for your practice. And you get, you start out with one small thing, and then they want this and that and the other thing, and then you're embroiled in all the family stuff. And they're calling you all the time. In ancient times, they didn't have to worry about this. The parents couldn't call and say, oh, you've got to hear the latest family crisis. But now they can. And that makes it more difficult, So I think, we are nowadays, we're still members of our family. I think it's nice, people can go back and visit their family, but short and sweet visits. I found that the shorter it is, the sweeter it is. Yeah, because they just want to see you and know you're well. That's the basic thing. They just want to see you and know you're well. And so you go for 2 or 3 days, they see you, they know you're well, they're happy. On the 4th day, that's when everything starts happening. Because now you've been there for a few days, they fed you, they've given, pampered you. Now you've got to hear what's going on in the family. And now you've got to hear, the whole thing. And you're visiting, and you've had a very nice life. You're off doing what you want to do, living at some beautiful place, and now you're coming to visit us. So, can you come back from your Shangri-La a little bit and get down to the real world and help the family. You know, that starts on day 4. Yeah. Now, to help the family, we could use some more money. Yeah. And then, you know, so-and-so's sick. It'd be really nice if you could go and take care of them. And this one needs to go to a doctor's appointment. And this one is, you know, has substance abuse problems, and you need to help them. You know, you said you're off doing this to benefit sentient beings. So here, plenty to benefit in your family. You can take the dog to the vet. Yeah, the dog is sick. Yeah, and on and on and on and on. And that's what's tricky about it, because we do say we want to benefit sentient beings, and there are sentient beings in front of us to benefit. But then we get hooked. Yeah, and instead of benefiting others with equanimity, we start benefiting them with attachment. Yeah, and we're back where we were before, and that attachment is like a big ring, and anybody just has to send out a little hook, and they hook us with it, and we go back. Yeah. So in today's day and age, you know, it takes a lot to keep the ordination, because you not only have societal pressures and family pressures, but your old friends, you have the entertainment industry, everything around you is saying, you know, sense pleasure. Everything around you is, but sense pleasure includes emotional relationships. Don't think sense pleasure is just eating and drinking and sex. Sense pleasure includes emotional relationships, because how do the emotional relationships happen? It's through looking at the person, talking to them, hearing them. It's through our senses that this emotional relationship gets formed, and the emotional relationship is often more stronger than the physical attachment. Okay, you know, so everything around us is telling us we're nuts. That's why they say the Sangha is like white crows. How often do you see a white crow? Yeah. They say it's like swimming upstream. Yeah. So it is. There are these difficulties. And so, you know, we have to, each of us in our individual case, to see what it is and to see what we're willing to do and how we can do that without getting hooked. And also being able, you know, to set limits or to make things clear to our family, what we'll do and what we won't do. And to be able to endure, like Ratnapala, his family didn't even give him food. You know, so to be able to endure whatever they tell us. Yeah, like you're out of your mind.
The other thing that helped me a lot with this issue about helping family is that I got very clear that the only help I could really give them was just this life help. Mm-hmm. And that is not really very beneficial, actually. And the most help that I can give them is to practice and become skillful in help for the long term. Mm-hmm. And since I have a karmic connection with them in future lives, to be able to help, really, really help.
Mm-hmm.
I can sympathize with your point of view, and I had an experience that almost for sure would have prevented me coming here. 13 years ago, my cousin passed away in her early 40s, and she left behind 2 beautiful daughters, aged 9 and 12, and I had and still have a close relationship, especially with the younger one. And so I thought, well, it's my duty to help raise these daughters for my cousin Rosalind, who's no longer here. And I thought it was just an obvious choice to go. And then, I got more interested in coming here, and then there were other things happening. But over time, I saw that they were surrounded by loving people. And they had a whole crew of people in the family that stepped up to the plate, including their grandmother. And now the eldest one, I think she's 24, she's living in London, England. She's flourishing. And the younger one, we still keep in touch. It's not, really often, but she's flourishing. She just, graduated from university. So I wasn't the only one that was going to be the difference here. Mm-hmm. It was just that everyone stepped forward in this very tragic circumstance. And these girls are beautifully held.
A more simple question. Earlier, when we talked about going forth, there was 5 precepts and 3 promises. Is this the same as the 8 Mahayana?
Oh, no. It's the 5 precepts are the standard 5 precepts plus celibacy. And then the going forth, there's 3 promises, which are to abandon the signs of lay people, that's clothes and hair and activities, to adopt the behavior and the signs of a renounced person, and to follow the instructions of your preceptor. Okay. What we do here at the Abbey is, instead of that, we have the 8 Anagarika precepts, which is what Christina has now, which everybody who was ordained here had before they ordained. And so those, you have the 5 precepts with celibacy. And then the other 3 precepts are similar to the 8 Mahayana precepts, to abandon singing, dancing, and music, entertainment, not wearing perfumes, ornaments, and garlands, not sitting on high, expensive beds and thrones, and not eating at unsuitable times. Yeah, so that's what we have people do for a year before they take the ordination. So it's slightly different than the going forth ceremony. When you get the Shramanera or Shramaneri precepts, that ordination, there's many steps in it. And so one of the earlier steps is the going forth. And that's where you accept the bowl and the robes and so on. And then after that, you get the Shramaneri precepts. Before it, you take the 5 precepts. So what they do in the Tibetan tradition is they do what they give the 5 precepts. They do the part with the bowl and the robes, and then they stop the ceremony. Yeah, and then a person has taken Rabjang, and then they can later come back and become a novice.
And also, another saying is to comment on your 4 days thing. People are like fish; they get old after 3 days. So that's a saying. But my question is, what was the point of Ratnapala visiting his family? Was it out of compassion, or why did he even do it?
Okay. My guess with that is that he thought maybe he could go back and help them and teach them some Dharma. Yeah. And because his parents had said he must come back. Yeah, remember, that was part of it. So I think it was part of his fulfilling that, even though it was many years later.